Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Big Apple Blitz. What's going on? Matt O'Leary, Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how's it going this Monday?
It's going. The Giants 2-7, 0-4 against the division. Terrible football team. Tired of watching them play, but got to do it. Got to talk about it. You know, another embarrassing loss at home against a divisional rival. What more is there to say?
Yeah, we'll start with the Giants and then in the second half of the show get into a surprising Jets win on Thursday Night Football. But starting with this game, 27-22 final, the Giants lose to the Commanders, who are off to an impressive 7-2 start. I don't think anyone had the Commanders starting this season 7-2. And I felt this game. Now, I, with the Jets not playing, basically spent the entire day on Red Zone like anyone should if their team isn't playing. And anytime they would flip to this game, I just felt myself getting frustrated because it felt like for the Giants, some missed chances and some missed opportunities. You mentioned before we started here, they ran the ball well in the first half, gifted the Commanders a possession on the 2-yard line, which I'm sure we can get into. But just not enough. They scored 22 points, which is a nice change. And Daniel Jones finally, for the first time in almost 2 years, threw a touchdown pass at home, but not enough to beat a better Commanders team.
No, the Commanders are just the better team. I didn't expect the Giants to beat them, but you know what? I still feel like the Giants hit a new low by losing to them. And what I mean by that is essentially for the last several years, this Giants team, I mean, several years is an understatement. The Giants have been bad for a very long time, but every year it's been like, okay, at least we know we'll at least split with Washington. You know, we'll find the way to sneak something out in the division at some point. Well, now they're 0-4 against the division. They can never seem to beat Philly. They never beat Dallas, and they're 0-2 versus Washington. So as the league has changed and Washington has added talent, they're in a new era, and they went ahead. They go and they add Jaden Daniels and they transform that team, and now they're contenders. And the Giants have been left behind, and now they're losing to Washington. We are now the easy win on the schedule for the NFC East opponents. It's just disappointing. It's disheartening. The Giants have hit a new low, and like you said, missed opportunities yesterday, whether you want to talk about the turnover that Daniel Jones had and whether you want to blame him or blame the offensive line. I don't know, and I don't care. The Giants had opportunities to win this game. They failed to maximize those opportunities, failed to capitalize, and they just continue to lose. And that's just what bad football teams do. It's what poorly coached bad football teams do. They find ways to lose. The Giants are experts at that.
Yeah, and I wanted to pull up the box score, and I'm going to make a point, not one that I believe, but I'm sure it's one that you've gotten in the comments and that you've seen online. Someone who, just goes and checks the box scores can go, oh, Daniel Jones, efficient day, 20 of 26, 2 passing touchdowns, 119.7 rating, also ran for 50 yards and a touchdown. So responsible for 3 offensive touchdowns, didn't throw an interception, had a high QBR and passer rating. Clearly, it's not Daniel Jones's fault. Now, again, that's not my take on it, but I'm just saying in general, I'm sure you see that reaction from this game. How do you dispel that? Or like, what is it that you find yourself saying to those who present the box score numbers and say, see, it's actually not on the quarterback?
I mean, I don't think yesterday's loss necessarily was on the quarterback. I don't think Daniel Jones was the biggest problem with the Giants yesterday, but at the end of the day, all of that production, literally every single passing yard that you see gained by Daniel Jones there, it happened in the second half. That's the problem with this team. A lot of those stats, those touchdowns, those yards, it's garbage time. The Washington Commanders got out to an early lead against the Giants, and they pretty much just sat on it. They knew that they were going to win this game once they went up by a couple of scores, and it was just a matter of how close can the Giants make the final score look. And they made it look pretty close. They came within 5 points, but they never had a chance of winning. So I don't know how you dispel it. Listen, Daniel Jones truthers, Daniel Jones supporters, these guys, you're not going to convince them that he's a bad quarterback. It just is what it is at this point. You're losing, or you're fighting a losing battle if you're trying to get them to realize what kind of a quarterback Daniel Jones is. But I will say, for 2 quarters in yesterday's game, he did play good football. The problem is that it was only for 2 quarters. The first half of that game, the Giants, the whole game plan was make sure Daniel Jones doesn't make any mistakes. Don't give him an opportunity to. Don't even let him throw the fucking ball. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to curse. But it's just that's what the whole game plan was. They ran the ball for like 15 straight plays. They didn't want to let Daniel Jones throw. He finally does, and he fumbles, and Washington gets the ball. They get a 2-score lead eventually in the first half, and they just sit on it. That's how it goes now. The Giants aren't actually in these games. They're just getting close because the team is letting them. So that's what I would say to Giants fans who look at the box score and say Daniel Jones turned in some elite performance. Oh, his 90 PFF grade. I don't care about any of that shit. Doesn't matter. Watch the actual game. First half, he was barely even a part of the game. Second half, he racked up a bunch of garbage time yards.
Yeah, I wanted to pull it up. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but his first half, did he have like, is it 6
0 yards and 1 touchdown? 0 yards
that?
at the end of the first half. He had 0 yards and 1 touchdown.
Yeah, that's remarkable, actually. And all, like you said, literally all. That's not an exaggeration to say all the 174 yards came in the second half of the game here. Which, yeah, that's a really, really nice half of football. But unfortunately, not being able to put together a full 4 quarters, that seems like the story of this Giants team. And it's been that way for a little bit now. Peter brings up, and I know this isn't going to be a consolation, but well, at least the Giants looked good breaking out the throwbacks. I do like the throwback uniforms, and I did get excited when that flashed up on the screen at the start of the game.
Yeah, those uniforms are great. I wish that they would be the primaries once again. I always say it, I'm not crazy about the Navy helmets. I never have been crazy about the Navy helmets. I think if they had the standard Giants royal blue with the same white face mask and big Giants logo, perfect uniforms then. But I love those jerseys. I think they're far superior to our primary home jerseys.
What do you make of this comment from Wild Wave, who says Neighbors is going to burn down MetLife eventually? Kid is a time bomb waiting to go off.
I don't agree with this. I think that Neighbors is just, he has a personality, and I appreciate that. I have complained so many times in the past about the company lines that the Giants always spit out. Daniel Jones says the same 3 things after every loss. Brian Daboll says the same 3 things after every win and every loss. Like, I'm tired of that. Malik Neighbors is asked questions by the reporters, and he gives truthful and honest answers, and I appreciate that. He has a personality, and he's upset because the team is losing, and he has every right to be upset. What I really don't like is that there are Giants reporters who make the same complaints that I do, who say, that the Giants don't give them enough to talk about because they just go with these company lines. They don't give any insight into the organization. The Giants reporters will complain about that all the time. And then Malik Neighbors finally opens up, says something honest, speaks his mind, and the reporters want to kill him for it. And they drive these narratives about how the locker room is falling apart. And that just pisses me off. Like, what is the reporter? What are these reporters really trying to do? Are they trying to run this kid out of town? Are they just trying to find another player to make this super villain in New York? I hate it. I'm sick of it. I appreciate the honesty. He and everything that he has said so far, Neighbors, that he's gotten criticism for, everything that he said has been true. He has been open. The play calling has been confusing, and the Giants do need more talent on the roster. All 3 of those things, objectively true. So why are we going to kill the guy? Why are we going to get upset with him for speaking his mind? He's not throwing anybody under the bus. He didn't say any names. He didn't say Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. He didn't say anything like that. Anytime he's asked about Daniel Jones, he gives him praise. But everybody wants to take his words, turn them, make a narrative out of it, and try and make him a villain. I'm not going to stand for it. Malik Neighbors, he's good. He's young. He's got the exact mentality of a WR1 in the NFL. Look around the league. You see Jamar Chase get into screaming matches with Joe Burrow in the middle of games, not even on the sidelines, literally on the field. We've seen that happen. You don't hear Bengals fans complaining about him and wanting to trade him away. Why should the Giants be upset, or why should Giants fans make Neighbors out to be some supervillain when he's not. He's literally just a talented young player who's frustrated with all the losing, and so am I.
Yeah, I totally get it. I understand his frustrations. I'm not worried about Malik Neighbors at all. 9 games into his career, he's been very, very productive, and I think he has a bright future ahead of him. Again, that's not an area that I would really be all that concerned about. His frustration's valid, and I don't think I think a majority of the fans agree with the things that Neighbors either A says or B is doing. I think it's really only either other fans or people who cover the team that make a big deal out of it. G-Man 2011 says DJ plays good or bad, we still lose. We definitely need a quarterback ASAP, but more and more holes are appearing weekly. Find it hard to defend Dable after each game. The Giants owner a few weeks ago came out and defended his guys, and you kind of said, not so fast. We've seen this one before where the Maras give a vote of confidence to GM or a coach, and the next thing you know, they're gone. Has your feelings changed at all since these comments? And what do you think happens at the end of the day here?
My feelings on that haven't changed. It is a long season and anything can happen. John Mara can get embarrassed in week 15 and just decide, screw it, I'm pulling the trigger and I'm blowing it all up. That's totally possible. But this comment, like, I understand, I get the frustration. DJ plays good or bad, we still lose, definitely need a quarterback, but more holes appearing weekly. But the finding Dable part, or finding it hard to defend Dable part, is where I'll disagree. I actually think that the only reason the Giants had any semblance of competitiveness in yesterday's game was because of Brian Dable. I know that obviously when you say it's hard to defend Dable, you're pointing to the 2-point conversion plays. Those were embarrassing. They were terrible play calls. Brian Dable needs to stop with the 2-point conversions. He needs to just take the extra point. Agreed. But throughout the entire rest of the game, his play calling was a masterclass. Daniel Jones played well yesterday because he had a lot of wide open receivers, and he had some absolutely incredible play calls that he was working with from Brian Dable. The first half, the Giants didn't have a single passing yard, yet they still had a touchdown and they were still competitive because Brian Dable was calling a masterclass in a rushing attack. I think that his play calling in yesterday's game is the number one thing that I would point to and say, hey, he is the right head coach. He is the right guy to have in the building, because his play calling yesterday at times was masterful. Now, he had his mistakes. He absolutely did. Every coach does, though. You can't be 100% perfect 100% of the time. The problem with this Giants team isn't that they have a bad play caller or they have a bad quarterback. It's that they're just a bad team with a very thin margin for error. So when Brian Dable makes those 1 to 2 bad mistakes, they look way worse than they truly are. Because for other teams in the grand scheme of things, like how about yesterday, the Philadelphia Eagles made the same stupid mistakes with their 2-point conversions. Right. And it was like, what is Nick Sirianni doing? But they have talent on their roster, so they rose above it. They fought back, they battled, and other players stepped up and made plays. Those types of mistakes shouldn't absolutely sink a team and cause them to implode. But for the Giants being such a bad team, again, with such a thin margin for error, those 1 to 2 mistakes in a game absolutely kill them. And that's why Daniel Jones isn't asked to throw the ball downfield. That's why they don't encourage him to throw into tight windows very often, because they know that if he commits one turnover, they probably lose this game. And he did exactly that. He committed the one turnover. He got sacked. Wasn't his fault that he got sacked. Is his fault that he fumbled. The left tackle didn't put the ball on the damn ground. He put the ball on the ground. He fumbled. That one mistake is the difference between the Giants winning and losing the game. And that's really what it boils down to, the margin for error being super thin. So I can defend Dable for yesterday's game. I thought that he called a great game. It's just when you are a bad football team, you cannot afford to make mistakes. This Giants team is mistake prone. It's why they're a bad football team. It goes hand in hand. And ultimately, that's why they keep losing games. But it's not because of Dable's play calling. Dable called a great game yesterday, and he does deserve credit for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Dable's play calling absolutely kept them in the game. They scored a touchdown with their quarterback throwing for 0 yards. That's number one. But number two, something we haven't really got to yet, is the Giants' rushing attack was really good in this game. 31 carries, 164 yards, touchdown. They averaged 5.3 yards per attempt. Another day where Tyrone Tracy, is starting to look like this team's number one running back. Devin Singletary, 7 carries and an efficient 33 yards and 4.7 yards per attempt. Daniel Jones with an efficient day on the ground, over 50 carries, got in the end zone. Like that should help a team with a quarterback that, you really just kind of want to be a game manager. You don't want them to take too many chances, don't want them to lose you the game. Well, they ran the ball a lot and it was working. It was, to me, I think the fumble and gifting the Commanders the ball on the 2-yard line was a really, really big change in this game because the Giants were kind of hanging around. I thought their defense was doing an okay job. On the game, they held the Commanders to under 4 yards a carry. Jane Daniels, I just thought was really impressive. He had 209 yards and just 22 passing attempts and 2 touchdowns. But, overall, I thought they did enough to hang close, but obviously not enough to win.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, though. And that's probably the best that this Giants team can do is hang close, but not win these close games, against good teams, especially like last week versus the Steelers. They should have been able to win that game, but they hung close and ultimately couldn't get it done. And, that's just where we are with this Giants team. But you're right. The rushing attack was awesome yesterday. It has been for much of the year. And I thought the play calling from Dable was exceptional. I actually thought the run blocking was really good in that first half. I thought that as awful as Chris Hubbard is, the new left tackle who's starting, he's been pretty good as a run blocker. He's just the worst pass protector I've ever seen. But the offensive line did solid in the running game. And Tyrone Tracy Jr., that's the true star here. He is RB1 for this Giants team. He looked great. Devin Singletary looked good also. The Giants have a very solid backfield now. This is a team with a lot of weaknesses and a lot of holes, and they do keep appearing weekly, as G-Men 2011 said. There are a lot of holes all over this team, but there are some bright spots. There are some areas where you're like, okay, they have some solid talent there. They just got to keep building out the rest of this roster. So I can see hope for the future, and I can see a path where Dable does keep the head coaching job, and next year they make a couple of crucial changes to the roster, and boom, they're back into playoff contention. I don't think they're that far off. But ultimately, they are a team, like I said, with a very thin margin for errors. So they have to run the ball perfectly almost every play. They have to convert every 4th down. They have to convert every 2-point conversion. And you're just not going to be able to do it when you have a quarterback who you have to play call around. You have to play call to make sure that he doesn't make those mistakes. And honestly, their defense as well has a lot of holes in it. The secondary is a problem. Deonte Banks is a problem now officially. There's a lot going on with this Giants team that extends past the quarterback, but also at the end of the day, I think that this Giants versus Commanders matchup is the perfect one to highlight, where one team has the same quarterback that they've had for 6 years of losing. The other team got a brand new quarterback, and he immediately transformed the roster and turned them into contenders. That's what it's going to boil down to for the Giants. They need to find their version of Jaden Daniels.
That they do, because as we opened the show with, no one thought that the Commanders would be 7-2, but I also don't think anyone anticipated Jaden Daniels would be this good out of the jump. And really, the quarterback position matters so much. We saw the Texans go from a team that was picking, in the top 2 to a team that made the playoffs last year. The Commanders are on their way to likely making the playoffs this year after a 7-2 start. And it's a big difference. Do you agree with G-Men's comment here? Put Daniels on this Giants team and they're 7-2.
Yeah, probably. I think that's absolutely. I mean, they would have beaten Washington the first time. They probably would have beaten Washington yesterday if the 2 quarterbacks were flipped. They beat the Steelers for sure. There's 3 more wins right there at least. So, yeah, I think that's totally possible that they would be 7-2. I think Daniels is really talented. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as a rookie.
That's for sure. Joe Shane's son knew, unfortunately.
Yeah, that he did. He really wanted the Giants to draft Jaden Daniels. Dude, listen, even Drake May looked awesome yesterday. Now, not perfect, had some mistakes, but he's got that X factor. And that's what I'm talking about when I say, like, Daniel Jones, he can be good enough. Like, he can make these plays and keep the Giants hanging close. But, like, you look at that last play of the game yesterday that Drake May made, that 0 seconds left on the clock touchdown throw. They ultimately lose that game. The Patriots have just one of the worst rosters in the NFL, period. But that kind of a play, never seen Daniel Jones make a play like that. Yeah, He ran over 2 guys and fell into the end zone yesterday. It was an awesome, sick touchdown run, sure. But clutch play, 0 seconds on the clock, got to have it, scramble for 11 seconds and make a throw into the end zone to score a touchdown. Daniel Jones isn't capable of that. Who is capable of that? Drake May. I would argue Caleb Williams is probably capable of that, even though he's in a bad situation kind of with the Bears. Jaden Daniels is capable of that. CJ Stroud. There's young quarterbacks who step into the league and just have that it factor that Daniel Jones doesn't have. You just got to find the way to get one of those quarterbacks, but continuing to middle and just sit there and be content with average mediocrity, slightly below average quarterback play. The Giants aren't going to turn things around until they just have an honest conversation with themselves and say, we need to swing for the fences. We need to take a quarterback. I get it. They weren't able to make the trade up and get Drake May or Jaden Daniels this offseason. They still should have done something. The fact that they are in this, they're wasting a year by not having a rookie on the bench at least learning. The way that Daniel Jones is the true starter, not a bridge, it's a wasted year. They should have had somebody on their bench. They should have had somebody on their bench 2-3 years ago sitting behind Daniel Jones because it's been so long of him being mediocre or worse. But right now, that's where we are. I think that this team has a lot of pieces on the defensive side of the ball, especially. If you plug in CJ Stroud level player, I know those are few and far between. I think Cam Ward could be that guy that steps in and immediately this team is just, a couple pieces away from contending.
Yeah, I have done my early stuff on college. I still have a ways to go, and I wasn't anticipating scouting quarterbacks, so this is a little bit new for me. But I think Cam Ward's the quarterback that I like the most now, and things obviously subject to change, but I would anticipate him being the first quarterback taken. And it very well could end up being the Giants. The unfortunate thing is there's 9 teams that have 2 wins, so it's steep competition for the top of the draft here.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants are 2-7 and picking, I think, 7th. It's kind of ridiculous. So obviously a lot can change between now and the end of the season, and a lot will change. Giants have a pivotal draft matchup coming up against the Panthers next week. Whoever loses that game is probably the winner in the long run. It's kind of a tank game. It's a perfect tank battle. But yeah, a lot can happen between now and the end of the regular season. We'll see where the Giants land, but Drake May, man, crash for Cam, or not Drake May. Cam Ward is what I meant to say. Crash for Cam. That's my new slogan.
I love it. Any final thoughts on this game before we get over to the Jets on Thursday night?
No, I'm tired of it. I don't want to talk about this game anymore. Let's talk about the Jets.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about that. All right, let's get into the Jets' surprising 21-13 win. Vegas did it to us again. An absolutely nasty line where the Jets are favored by 1 point. Everyone, myself included, loading up on the Texans money line. And what do you know? The New York Jets win to snap a 5-game losing streak, 21-13. This game, similar to the Giants, though, a tale of 2 halves. First half was horrible. Rodgers didn't look very good. Jets had no points, shut out at the half, a frustrating one. In the second half, they 3 passing touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers ends up with 211 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 118.1 passer rating. And I mean, I think the highlight is the Garrett Wilson performance, 9 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, both touchdowns, one-handed catches. I didn't think he'd be able to surpass the first one. But the second one, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that's the best touchdown catch that I've ever seen a Jet make. And we were texting that night. I think it rivals the Odell Beckham catch from 2014.
It rivals it. It's not quite there. It's close. Like I said to you in the text, it's close. OBJ's is still better, but it's the catch of the year. I saw people yesterday were like, oh, Garrett Wilson's catch of the year only lasted a few days. What's his name? Devontae Smith. No, that Garrett Wilson catch, utterly ridiculous. Backhanded, barely gets that foot down or that shin bone down. That play was truly incredible. Garrett Wilson, you got to give him more opportunities to just make plays. Throw it up there. Let him make these plays. That's got to be Aaron Rodgers' number one mission. Get the ball into the hands of Garrett Wilson. He's truly incredible. It was fun watching the Jets in that Thursday night game, especially in the second half. They started to look like what we expected them to be going into the season. It's tough, to go up against a really good Texans team. Obviously, this is a depleted Texans team, so missing a lot of talent. Stephon Diggs done for the year. Nico Collins still on injured reserve. So, but even still, a great Texans team, 6-2 Texans team. You managed to beat them on prime time. It's a statement win for the Jets, and it's the one that gives you a little bit of hope for the future that says, hey, maybe they can turn things around and make something of this season.
Yeah, a loss would have really, really put the final nail in the coffin, but a win and the Hopium is back for another week. We'll get into on Thursday their upcoming games before the bye week. They got one against the Cardinals, who just run the ball at will, and then the Colts on Sunday Night Football before going into the bye. But Garrett Wilson now sneaky after a little bit of a slow start and a lot of maybe he's just a wide receiver 2 conversation. Now has 663 receiving yards, which is third in the NFL. I think he's putting some of those narratives to bed a little bit, especially after going into the Minnesota game. Really, his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, 4 of them, he's got over 90 receiving yards, and he's got 4 touchdowns in his last 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think that anyone who was trying to argue he's a WR2 was out of their minds. I also do think, though, that the addition of Davante Adams has helped open things up in the receiving game for Garrett Wilson. You know, the Jets were working really hard all offseason and into the season to find a complementary piece in that receiving core who can open things up for Garrett. I think it finally happened when they traded for Davante Adams. I don't think Davante Adams is necessarily the former first-team All-Pro that he once was, but he's definitely a capable player. His release package is still among the best in the NFL. He's still an excellent route runner, and he commands attention. And for that reason, Garrett Wilson has had some more opportunities. And I think that's only going to continue to increase as the season goes on. I think the more that Davante Adams integrates into the lineup and into the offensive attack, the more opportunities that's going to create for him and for Garrett Wilson. So I think that the passing attack and the passing game for the Jets is starting to uptick now, but it's really only getting started, and there's a lot of potential for growth here.
Yeah, I think this was by far Davante Adams' best game as a Jet so far. His 3rd game in, 7 catches, 91 yards, the touchdown. And I thought he really put the route running skills on display in this one. The touchdown was nice, but there was even a play earlier in the game. I think it was a 4th down play, actually, if memory serves correct, where he ran a really good route and extended a drive. I think him getting on the same page with Rodgers took a little bit longer than I thought it would. I thought this was something where you could kind of just come in and pick up where they left off from, a few years ago. But this was the first sign of it. And again, it was, really just a good half. First half wasn't very good, but defensively for the Jets, changing gears slightly, they had CJ Stroud in hell. Eight sacks in this game. Quinnen Williams was awesome. Will McDonald was awesome again. Hassan Reddick, his best game as a Jet. And I mean, if you look at his numbers, I can pull it up here. 11 of 30, 191 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 8 sacks, 59.2 passer rating, 27.7 QBR.
Yeah, the Jets defense. Listen, I got to bring it up on every episode. It's obligatory. I got to bring up my stupid 20-man dynasty league. Jermaine Sherwood might be the best waiver wire pickup of the season. He had over 20 points in this game for my IDP league. So just awesome. I'm loving everybody on the Jets defense, giving CJ Stroud fits, suffocating quarterbacks. Stroud, I will say, though, yeah, he was sacked 8 times. He really struggled. Again, the lack of playmakers is definitely going to hold back that Houston Texans offense. I think that a lot of it, coverage sacks, but when you say coverage sacks, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That doesn't discount the pass rushers. That just means that your coverage did its job. And I think that you have to say it was a great game from the Jets defense on both the defensive line and in the secondary. A really good performance from them, and one that, again, like I said, with the offense starting to hit a stride, maybe the defense is as well, and maybe this team is finally taking shape. After they fired Saleh, everybody was hoping for that mid-season coaching change spark, like things were going to turn around immediately and it would spark like an instant win and some sort of uplifting of the team. Sometimes it doesn't happen like that. It's not an instant turnaround on a spark. Sometimes it needs to gradually build over the next several weeks. Like you just said with Davante Adams, he didn't pick up right where he left off with Aaron Rodgers. It took a few weeks and now they're starting to put it together. That could just be the case for this Jets team following the firing of Saleh. Maybe they just needed a few weeks and now they're hitting their stride. I hope that that's the case. Again, a win over a 6-2 Texans team that had Super Bowl aspirations, still does. It's a really impressive performance. So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the defense because they also balled out in this one.
Yeah, Peter S. is Jekyll and Hyde Jets from like when I was younger, but still maybe too little too late. I think we'll put a pin in that one for a second. And then First State Jet says, just got to go on a run with no room for error. Used up all our losses on stupid teams. Denver, New England, Pittsburgh. I don't know if I'd put Pittsburgh in there as a stupid team. Yes, the Jets, probably with how that first half was going, they should have put that game away before absolutely melting down in the second half. but they are likely going to be a playoff team. I don't know if they win the division. I think the Ravens probably end up doing so, but I think they're a lock for that 5 seed. It is frustrating though, because you look at where they are at 3-6 and how the rest of the AFC is shaping out, and you just go, if they had one or maybe two of those weird games go differently, they are so much more in this than what they are now I believe they're the 10th seed in the AFC at 3-6.
Yeah, I think that the loss of the Steelers is, that's fine. Steelers are a good team. That loss to Denver and that loss to New England, those are stupid losses. Those are just inexcusable. If you have those 2 wins, I mean, this Jets team is absolutely getting back in the race, I think. What's the record right now for the Jets?
They are 3-6, and they have to go in front of teams like the Colts, who they have at 4-5, and I think Denver at 5-4, and the Colts are the teams who are in the 6th and 7th spot in the AFC.
It's very doable.
Or Chargers, rather.
It's crazy to say. Yeah. It's crazy to say, but it's absolutely doable. Like you said, they play the Colts. That's going to be one to circle. That's a crucial matchup upcoming. But yeah, I mean, if they had those wins against Denver and New England, they'd be in the 6th seed. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So the Chargers are 5-3 in the 6th spot. Broncos 5-4 in the 7. Then you have the Colts at 4-5, the Bengals at 4-5, and the Jets at 3-6. But 28%. Oh, sorry, I gotta scroll that down a little bit. 28%, still life.
It's doable. Yeah, there's life. We're breathing now. Live on the table. Shout out to the Bolts, though. I saw you said Chargers up there in the 6th seed. Go Bolts. That's my team.
Is that your adopted AFC team for the rest of this year, we think?
Yeah. My sister, she lives in LA. So
nice.
I've decided that I'm a Chargers fan. So because the Giants just give me misery every single week. But my Chargers, they played a damn good football game yesterday. Justin Herbert, he's getting there in those MVP conversations. I'm actually going to a Chargers game, not this weekend, the following. I'll be in LA, Chargers versus Bengals, and I am thrilled. I can't wait.
You might get to see 2 watchable offenses.
Exactly.
That's gonna be a nice change.
Yeah, it's the Giants bye week, so I'm like, screw it. I'm going to a game. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, I think there's a good comment from Wild Wave, which we could spend some time on here. It says, we talking trade deadline and any moves y'all expect for the Jets, Giants, buyers or sellers. Since we're on the Jets right now, they made a lot of their moves already. I feel like I don't foresee them trading off anyone really, unless maybe Mike Williams, but with Allen Lazard hurt, maybe that kind of stops them from making a move like that. DJ Reed, I don't think they are going to trade. He's on an expiring deal, but I think they hold on to him. And teams have called about Garrett, but with 2 more years of control, I don't think they're trading Garrett Wilson anyway. I think the Jets should just hang up the phone unless you're getting offered 2 first-round picks plus. But even then, I don't know. I'm not looking to trade Garrett Wilson. So I don't really see the Jets being buyers or sellers. I think they kind of just stand pat. What's your take on the Jets? And then how about your Giants?
Any chance the Jets are going to sell Mike Williams, though, at the deadline? Is that possible?
I originally thought yes, but with Allen Lazard on IR, so he missed 1 game already, so he has 3 more before he could come back. If you trade him, then you are putting yourself in having to start Xavier Gibson, or which something we didn't even get to. I thought Malachi Corley was going to cost the Jets this game. We kind of put that on the back burner a little bit because the Jets end up winning, but he went full Deshaun Jackson. And the words that were coming out of my mouth, I was not in a good headspace.
Yeah, that was bad. That was embarrassing. I will say, though, he makes that one mistake and then he doesn't see the field again. I don't know.
He might not see the field again this year. He only played like 18 snaps before that.
I know. And I get it. It's a really bad, stupid mistake. But he flashes potential on that play as well. His explosiveness and ability to score. I get why he got benched after that. Put him in the doghouse for the rest of the game, sure. But, man, I hope that that's not going to remain. Like, the kid's talented, and I think he showed it on that play. He just needs to play more, and then those mistakes will become less frequent. Please give Malachi Corley some playing time, okay? My my IDP, my 20-man league, it's begging for it. So, but no, I like Malachi Corley. I think he's really talented. And they should get him out there. But you're right. I don't know if they're going to be comfortable trading away Mike Williams anymore, considering Lazard is on IR and Corley is now somebody who they probably don't feel comfortable depending on in a large quantity of snaps. So, yeah, Mike Williams probably stays. No reunion with my Chargers. But for the Giants, I think that they are going to be sellers at the deadlines. I think that the conversation around Azeez Ojulari is ridiculous and frustrating for me. I think that trading him would be an awful mistake, but there's way too much buzz surrounding it. I think it's an inevitability at this point that he's going to get traded tomorrow.
Yeah, I was gonna say if I had to pick a name on the Giants who's gonna get dealt, it feels like Azeez Ojulari would be that name. And I don't know, like, isn't the thought that he would yield like a 5th round pick, something like that in return?
Yeah, it was Dan Duggan of The Athletic reported that what he's heard from sources is best case scenario would be a 5th round pick for Azeez Ojulari. And I just think, why then? Then why? What do you get? Like, you're not going to get a 5th. The odds of drafting somebody in the 5th round who has the same level of talent as Azeez Ojulari, very thin. And Giants fans are immediately going to be like, well, we just drafted Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round. And the year before you drafted Eric Gray. Look how that went. The year before that, you got Marcus McKethan. He's not even on the team anymore. So 5th round picks, they're not a guarantee. And they're definitely not guaranteed to be anywhere close to the same stratosphere of talent as Azeez Ojulari, a guy who is a legitimate 1st round talent who fell to the 2nd round because of an injury rumor, didn't even have that injury. Yeah, he struggled to stay healthy over the last few years. But if you're looking at pure talent, and honestly, if you're looking at pure production and stats, the guy has been better than Kayvon Thibodeau throughout his career in every statistical measure, sacks as a rookie, sacks as a sophomore, everything. So being comfortable with just having Kayvon Thibodeau as your future, I get it. You invested a 1st round pick into him. You have to make him work. He's the starter. Sure. But pass rusher is not a need for this Giants team until they trade away one of their good pass rushers. This is a team that needs to continue to build. It cannot just be getting rid of good players for the sake of adding draft capital, taking more random crapshoot chances in the middle of the draft. You've got a good player. You got to hold on to it. You can't just keep rolling the dice here. Can't keep trading away your good players, in my opinion. I think it would be utterly ridiculous to trade him for a 5th round pick. I think that's terrible value. He's way too good of a player for that. I would much rather extend him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is this is the final year of his rookie deal, if I'm not mistaken. So your choice is either to trade him for a lower value as, a late day 3 pick, or extend him. What's your thought on like what kind of extension he'd be looking at as, more of a rotational guy?
I don't know how much he would get on the open market, and that's kind of been the big topic of debate for Giants fans. Oh, the Giants can't afford to pay him. He wants to be paid like a starter. He's going to get starting money. Is he, though? He's been injured throughout his career. He's only been a starter in spot starts. I don't think that a team is. I saw somebody say, oh, we can't afford to give another defensive lineman $20 million. I'm like, $20 million? Azeez Ojulari isn't getting $20 million on the open market. He's probably getting at best $8 million. And you're telling me you can't backload a 2-year deal worth $8 million on average if you're the Giants? Absolutely you can. Especially if you cut Daniel Jones and get an extra $20 million in cap space from that. The Giants barely have any players outside of their rookies on the books outside of 2026. I think that the longest extending contract is Brian Burns at 2029. But I mean, they're projected to have a ridiculous amount of money in 2026. Why not extend him on a 2-year deal, like a prove-it bridge deal, basically? Make it worth about $16 million, backload it so that more of the money is paid in 2026. Boom, you can easily afford Azeez Ojulari, and now you have 2 things. You have pass rushing depth, and you have insurance just in case Kayvon Thibodeau doesn't pan out, because him panning out is not a guarantee at this point. He's had injuries. He's had struggles. He's been wildly inconsistent as a down-to-down pass rusher. Azeez Ojulari is your backup plan if Kayvon Thibodeau doesn't become what you want him to become. And if Kayvon Thibodeau remains the player that he is right now, and Azeez Ojulari remains the player that he is right now, your stable of 3 pass rushers for the next 5 years with those 2 plus Brian Burns is perfect. That's everything that you need. So I just don't see the argument to trade this guy away for a 5th round pick. And the final kicker on this whole thing, say he does go into free agency and gets a big deal worth $10 million plus. Let's say that he actually somehow gets that contract that I don't think he's going to get. Then you get a comp pick in 2026 that's probably a 3rd round pick. So trading him for a 5th now Makes zero freaking sense.
Yeah, it's a great point bringing up the comp pick, and it's not like the Giants are in some rush where they need a 2025 pick. This rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it, they're going to need some draft capital over the next couple of years. And it's like, would you rather the fifth now or a third in 2 years from now? I think you take the third in 2 years from now. You're much more likely to hit on that third rounder than you are fifth, if you ask me.
Absolutely. And then you can also keep in mind, what if you extend him on a 1-year prove it contract and you give him a little bit more money in this offseason? And then if he walks in the following year, the comp pick might be even higher. Like then you're probably guaranteeing a third round pick if he really gets paid the following offseason. So I think it's stupid. I think it's inevitable. I think the Giants are going to do it. I think they're going to trade him for a 5th round pick tomorrow or maybe tonight, but I'm going to be pissed off when it happens. And it's not just my bias. I know that Fireside Giants fans know me as being the Azeez Ojulari guy. I wanted him before that draft. I was like thrilled. I was jumping up and down when they drafted him. It's not just my bias based on my pre-draft crush that I had for Ojulari. Look at his down-to-down production throughout his career. He's had a couple of bad luck seasons with injuries. So have a lot of other Giants players who still went on to get paid. Andrew Thomas being the primary example. Why not pay this really good pass rusher? Again, pass rusher is not a need for this Giants team until they let Ojulari walk. Then it's a major need for this team that they have to address in the offseason. They have enough needs to address. Don't open up another one. Find a way to keep this guy, keep this talent. If you can't get a deal done with him during the season, try to get one done in the offseason. And if you can't get one done, then you look to replace him. Having that 5th round pick is not going to do a whole lot for you.
No, I agree. I'm with you on that one. I do think he gets traded though. So we will react to any trade deadline moves on Thursday. We'll also preview the Tank Bowl between the Panthers and the Giants coming up in Germany, and the Jets trying to get back or continue their role of getting back on track. We got the announcer drop. It'll be Spiro Didis calling Jets and Cardinals in the 4 o'clock window on CBS. Gross, just right back where they belong right now. Until proven otherwise. But I think that'll do it for us in this one. Any closing thoughts before we hop out of here?
Yeah, I will just have to give myself a pat on the back and say during prediction time last week, I took the Jets to win and I took the Giants to lose. So we'll see what my predictions are on Thursday and we'll see if they come true.
Love it. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He's Anthony, and we will catch you next time.